And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we're going to be looking at some ways in which the Washington Commanders can upgrade the wide receiver position. We're going to be looking at a free agent that the Washington Commanders could maybe go after. We're also going to be looking at some trades that the Washington Commanders can explore, maybe getting a wide receiver that way. And lastly, we are going to look at the upcoming draft and looking at a wide receiver that I think could very much fall to the Washington Commanders, depending on what they want to do at pick 29. And so let's start with the free agent that the Washington Commanders can pick up, and that is T. Higgins. And this is somebody that I believe we've talked about this before at the trade deadline. Is this maybe a situation in which the Washington Commanders would go that way? They didn't. They got Marshawn Lattimore. Now we run into a situation where T. Higgins is a free agent. And you see here in the headlines that, there is maybe some momentum for the Commanders to get him. And this comes on the heels of a new update that we have. It appears that the Bengals director of player personnel was out at the Senior Bowl, and he had said that, they want to get T. Higgins back. They would love to have him, but it is going to come down to just can they get him at a reasonable number? I think that is really going to be the key there. Can they get him at a reasonable number? And, with the Bengals and their situation, I think that it was just a couple of days ago that Jamar Chase had come out and said that, look, he's looking for a contract extension. I think that is going to really play a factor into T. Higgins, which is one of the reasons why I think this is going to maybe affect what the Washington Commanders do, because with T. Higgins, he can certainly get it done. I look at his production. He had 911 yards. He only played in 12 games. I believe he had 12 touchdowns as well. So super productive. Definitely a player that I trust that can get beside Terry McLaurin and make a ton of plays out there. But I think what it comes down to is that, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, he's saying that T. Higgins is looking for a contract that is going to be 30 million yearly or more. And so with that being said, you have to wonder if you have the contract negotiations coming up with Terry McLaurin. Is it going to be something that is going to be worth it to get into the sweepstakes for T. Higgins? Like, is T. Higgins going to be a bit much? Because I think the bottom line is, when you look at Adam Peters, you look at the way that this front office really operates. They are a front office that actually operates in the way that they play chess and not checkers, and they're always looking ahead. And I think that when you're looking ahead and you're trying to maximize Jaden Daniels and this window when he's under this contract, you have to be cost efficient. You also need to get talent here that makes sense, and it is really going to grow with your young quarterback. And so T. Higgins at 26 certainly fits that. The Commanders have, I think, 90 million in cap space, and they could get it done. But then you have to think about the Terry McLaurin deal that is coming up. How can that work out between those two, where you're still going to have some money to go out and continue to upgrade this football team? Because we know it's going to need more than just upgrades at the wide receiving room. And so that's just a free agent that the Washington Commanders can go after. That is the situation with T. Higgins, and why it possibly opens up the door for him to come to Washington, because we definitely have the quarterback that I think fits with T. Higgins. But more importantly, like, we do have the salary cap for T. Higgins as well. So that's something to monitor. So next, I want to talk about some wide receivers that maybe the Washington Commanders could get involved in as far as a trade. And so I wanted to go ahead and start off with the Jets. And so when I look at the Jets, they certainly have a player that I think that the Washington Commanders might maybe take a look at. And that is going to be with Garrett Wilson. I think that Garrett Wilson is a player certainly that the Washington Commanders maybe get involved with, because, with Garrett Wilson and his situation there with the Jets, I don't think it was necessarily a great, fit with Aaron Rodgers for whatever reason. I think that they really struggled. They already have Devontae Adams. Maybe they're looking to pivot off of that. But I think to get a guy like Garrett Wilson, you would have to think about this. One, you're going to have to come up off of your first round pick, because I think right now the Jets where they sit. I think they're the seventh overall pick. You would have to give up probably your 29th overall pick. And then you would have to think about it like this. He's probably going to want an extension, right, to be a part of the deal in coming over. And like I just said, the Washington Commanders have the salary cap to do this at the 90 million, but it is what are you going to do to go along with Terry McLaurin and then Jaden Daniels? And you have to think about this long term because you don't want to tie up too much money into one position and then that hurts you as far as building out the rest of the football team. But make no mistake about it. Like, I think that a player like Garrett Wilson would certainly really boast this roster. He's certainly he's been not been in the league as long as well. So I think you have, a bit of youth on the side with Garrett Wilson. And so I think that him paired with Terry McLaurin, like I think that that would certainly be a dynamic duo. But from the cost efficiency here and just thinking about it from draft capital, do you want to naturally kind of build up your franchise via the draft? Do you feel like it is going to be worth giving up your first round pick? Because keep in mind, the Washington Commanders do, I believe, have 7 picks in this draft, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they do have 7 picks. And so you would have 6 if you let go of your round 1. Not terrible. And I just, it depends on what the Washington Commanders value that pick at. And then also, too, what that extension is going to look like. And so, another receiver that maybe could be on the move via trade here to the Washington Commanders, I think, is a player like maybe Cooper Kupp. I think that maybe Cooper Kupp is a player. Maybe he could be moved. I know we had talked about this a little bit before with the Rams, and maybe they might be willing to part ways with him. I think based off the fact that he's, I think 32, if I'm not mistaken, but I think probably for him, you maybe are looking at something like maybe a third rounder, maybe something like that, maybe gets the deal done. I'm not sure what else the Rams would want. They probably want some more draft capital, but I would say at least you're going to have to come up with maybe a second, third round pick to even get the conversation started for the Rams to really think about that. And then on top of that, you have to think like he's going to get the $5 million guaranteed heading into 2025, which is not bad, but you may have to run into maybe an extension with him. He's had the injury troubles as well. And currently he's actually 31. And so, I think that is another receiver maybe that fits with what Terry McLaurin likes to do. Here's a guy that can make some big plays down the field. We know he can run over the middle. He can pretty much do it all as a wide receiver. And so those are some wide receivers that maybe the Washington Commanders maybe look at via trade. And then we talked about T. Higgins via free agency. And so lastly, I want to talk about what the Washington Commanders could do if they elect to just keep the 29th pick in the draft. And so, just kind of going through this right now, I told you, I think the original mock draft, they had us taking an offensive lineman here out of Ohio State University, which I don't have an issue with that. But I think that, maybe another player that the Washington Commanders could maybe take a look at, and I think he's certainly going to be there. I think he's currently, I think CBS has him the second rated wide receiver on the board, but Lufer Burton III. I think that out of Missouri here, I think this is a player that certainly he intrigues me, right? I think that at pick 29, I think you might be getting some real value with him. In fact, according to NFL.com, they actually compare him to Garrett Wilson, right? And we just talked about Garrett Wilson. We talked about how he could be definitely a dynamic duo with Terry McLaurin. And so, I looked at his tape, and I think initially what really jumped off the tape for me is he reminds me a lot of a Deebo Samuels. I think he runs with a lot of anger and kind of aggression in the run game. And I think I see a player that can really create some yak, and that's yards after catch once he gets his hands on the football. But more importantly, I get like the type of speed like a Zay Flowers. Like he has that, and he has that type of flair about him when he celebrates and gets the catches and things like that. So I definitely love that. One of the things, or some of the things that they talk about, is he has the natural playmaking skills and instincts. I think that you do see that if you go look at that on tape. All you got to do is go to Yahoo, or not Yahoo, but YouTube, and you can see some of this stuff too as well. But he has the early acceleration too to get by defenders. He does do that. The body control, I think, was there. I think I've seen like some spectacular catches where he's able to kind of get through some traffic and stuff like that. He's got the ability to just time when to jump up and take the football out of the air. So I think he does that. And one of the things that they talk about as a real strength is he eliminates pursuit angles. And that is very true. That really popped off, I think, on the tape, that, man, he can certainly run away from some defenders. And so I love that, because for me personally, if you give him a 5 to 10 yard pass, I think it could turn into 30 yards. And so that's one of his weaknesses. They say 75% of his career catches were targeted inside the 10. But I thought he was tremendous with the run after the catch. And so I don't have an issue with that, because if Jaden Daniels is working the sticks, and I'm pretty sure Jaden Daniels can put the football on you in a 4 or 5 yard route and let you do the rest. Like, I would definitely love to have him in the offense. One of the things they say is he might struggle to catch the ball in traffic sometimes, and also too kind of finishing routes. He's inconsistent there. And I think that that's more something of maybe film study, kind of just learning how to kind of sit inside and round off those routes. And then they say he's a little leggy in the short area routes. And what essentially that means is, you want to see him go with more quicker steps, not so much of a stride. I can tell you that, just kind of coming from a semi track and field kind of deal background there. But I think that that's what they're kind of getting at. And that's just something that can be fixed in sheer footwork. But here's what one of the scouts say on NFL.com about him. Look, it says, I think he got bored with that offense. His playing style is like Jerry Jeudy, but you get with the St. Brown hands and toughness. So he's talking about St. Brown from Detroit, and he's talking about how good he is with the hands and the toughness, and how he really works the stick. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is who he's talking about. And so I like that comparison. I like the Garrett Wilson comparisons as well. And so I think that this is maybe a player the Washington Commanders take a chance on. And so anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this current wide receiver position upgrades that we have in front of us. Do you think that, yes, they could go out and they would sign a player like T. Higgins? Do you feel like, no, they might trade for a player like Garrett Wilson or Cooper Kupp? Do you feel like, no, they will actually go out and get a player that I just mentioned here in the draft, in Lufer Burton III? So I'd love to hear your comments. Make sure you press that like and subscribe button. We'll be talking more Washington Commanders football. And as I always say, go Commanders, and I will see you on the next one. All right, peace.